In a small village in northern Nigeria, there lived a young girl named Amina. She was 12 years old and loved to play with her friends, help her mother in the kitchen, and dream about going to school in the big city someday. Amina had a big smile and curious eyes that always seemed to be asking questions about the world around her. One day, Amina's grandmother came to visit. She was a respected elder in the village, and everyone listened when she spoke. After dinner, Amina heard her grandmother talking to her parents in hushed tones. She couldn't hear everything, but she caught words like tradition and becoming a woman. The next morning, Amina's mother sat her down and said, "Amina, it's time for you to become a real woman. We're going to have a special ceremony for you, just like all the women in our family have had for generations." Amina didn't know what to think. She was excited about the idea of a ceremony, but something in her mother's voice made her feel uneasy. "What kind of ceremony, Mama?" she asked. Her mother looked away and said, "It's called circumcision. It's something all girls must go through to be accepted as women in our community." Amina had heard whispers about this from some of the older girls, but she didn't really understand what it meant. She just knew it was something that made them look scared when they talked about it. A few days later, Amina's aunt came to their house early in the morning. "It's time," she said. Amina's mother nodded and took her hand, leading her to a small hut at the edge of the village. Inside the hut, there were several older women, including a lady Amina had seen helping when babies were born. The women told Amina to lie down on a mat. She was confused and a little scared, but she trusted her mother and the other women. What happened next was very painful and frightening for Amina. The women held her down while the birth helper used a sharp tool to cut part of her private area. Amina screamed and cried, but the women told her to be brave and that it would be over soon. After it was done, Amina felt sore and sad. She didn't understand why this had happened to her or why it was necessary. For days, she had trouble walking and was in pain. Her mother tried to comfort her, saying it was just part of growing up and that she would be fine soon. But Amina wasn't fine. She got a bad infection and became very sick with a high fever. Her parents were worried and took her to the small clinic in the nearest town. The nurse there looked very concerned when she saw Amina's condition. "This girl needs to go to the hospital in the city," the nurse said. "The circumcision has caused a serious infection. If we don't treat it quickly, she could die." Amina's parents were shocked. They had never thought the ceremony could be so dangerous. They borrowed money from relatives and took Amina to the city hospital. There, a kind doctor named Dr. Fatima treated Amina. While Amina was recovering, Dr. Fatima spoke to her parents. "What happened to Amina is called female genital mutilation, or FGM, Dr. Fatima explained. It's a harmful practice that can cause many health problems for girls and women. It's also against the law in Nigeria." Amina's parents were surprised to hear this. They had always thought it was just a normal tradition. Dr. Fatima continued, "Many people don't know how dangerous it is. Girls can get infections, have problems going to the bathroom, and even have difficulties when they grow up and want to have babies." As Amina got better, she and her parents learned more about the dangers of FGM. They found out that many girls suffered like Amina, and some even died from it. Amina's mother cried when she realized how close she had come to losing her daughter because of this tradition. When they returned to their village, Amina's parents decided to speak out against FGM. At first, many people in the village were angry. They said it was disrespectful to question old traditions, but Amina's mother was brave and kept talking about what had happened to her daughter. Slowly, some other parents started to listen. They didn't want their daughters to suffer like Amina had. A group of mothers formed a club to talk about protecting their girls. They invited Dr. Fatima to come and speak to the village about the health risks of FGM. Amina, even though she was still young, decided to be brave too. She talked to her friends about what had happened to her. Some of the girls were shocked, while others shared their own painful experiences. Together, they made a promise to protect their younger sisters and to never let their own future daughters go through FGM. As months passed, more and more families in the village stopped practicing FGM. It wasn't easy, and there were still some people who insisted it was necessary. But Amina and her parents kept sharing their story and the information they had learned. One day, a year after Amina's terrible experience, a government health worker came to the village. She was amazed to hear how the community had changed. "Your village can be an example for others," she said. "You've shown that it's possible to stop harmful traditions and protect girls' health." Amina felt proud of her village and her parents. She knew that speaking out had been hard, but it was worth it to save other girls from pain and danger. She decided that when she grew up, she wanted to become a doctor like Dr. Fatima, so she could help even more girls and women. As Amina's story spread to nearby villages, more communities started to question the practice of FGM. It wasn't a quick or easy change, but slowly, more girls were being protected. Amina's experience had started a movement that was saving lives and changing the future for many girls in Nigeria. As Amina grew older, she remained committed to her dream of becoming a doctor and helping to end FGM. She studied hard in school and eventually earned a scholarship to study medicine in the city. During her time at university, she learned even more about the physical and emotional impacts of FGM on women and girls. One day, during her final year of medical school, Amina received a call from her mother. "Amina, something wonderful has happened," her mother said excitedly. The chief's daughter refused to have her own daughter circumcised. She said she learned about the dangers from our family's story. Amina was overjoyed to hear this news. The chief's family was very influential, and their decision would surely impact many others in the village and beyond. She realized that the small steps they had taken years ago were still creating positive change. After graduating, Dr. Amina, as she was now called, decided to return to her home region. She wanted to work in rural clinics and continue educating communities about the dangers of FGM. She also wanted to provide medical care to women who had already undergone the procedure and were suffering from complications. In one village she visited, Dr. Amina met a young woman named Halima who was having trouble during childbirth due to the scarring from FGM. Dr. Amina was able to help Halima deliver her baby safely, but the experience was traumatic and dangerous. After the delivery, Dr. Amina sat down with Halima and her family. What happened to Halima is a common problem for women who have undergone FGM, Dr. Amina explained. The scars can make childbirth very difficult and dangerous for both the mother and the baby. Halima's husband, who had always believed FGM was necessary, was shocked. "I had no idea it could harm our wives and children like this," he said. "What can we do to stop it?" Dr. Amina smiled, encouraged by his question. "The most important thing is to spread awareness," she said. "Talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors. Tell them about the risks. And most importantly, protect your daughters and granddaughters from this practice." As Dr. Amina continued her work, she faced many challenges. Some communities were resistant to change, and there were times when she felt discouraged. But then she would remember her own experience and how far her village had come, and it would give her strength to keep going. One day, Dr. Amina was invited to speak at a conference in the capital city about strategies to end FGM in Nigeria. She shared her personal story and the success her village had achieved. Many people were moved by her words, including some government officials who were present. After her speech, a woman approached her. "Dr. Amina, my name is Zainab. I work for an international organization that fights against FGM. We've been looking for local partners in Nigeria, and I think your approach could make a real difference. Would you be interested in working with us?" Dr. Amina was thrilled at the opportunity. She knew that with more resources and support, she could reach even more communities. She agreed to collaborate with Zainab's organization. Together, they developed a program that combined medical education, community outreach, and economic empowerment for women. They knew that often, the women who performed FGM did it because it was their only source of income. So, they included job training and small business grants as part of their initiative. The program started in Dr. Amina's home region and slowly expanded to other parts of Nigeria. They trained local health workers, teachers, and community leaders to become advocates against FGM. They also worked with religious leaders to clarify that FGM was not a religious requirement, as some people believed. One of the most powerful parts of their program was the Sisters Circles. These were support groups for women and girls who had undergone FGM or were at risk of it. In these safe spaces, they could share their experiences, support each other, and learn about their rights and health. As the program grew, Dr. Amina started to see real change happening. More and more villages were declaring themselves FGM-free zones. Girls were staying in school longer, and women were starting small businesses instead of relying on income from performing FGM. But Dr. Amina knew there was still much work to be done. FGM was deeply rooted in some cultures, and changing long-held beliefs took time and patience. She also realized that laws alone weren't enough. Nigeria had outlawed FGM years ago, but the practice continued in many areas. One day, Dr. Amina received an invitation that would take her work to a new level. The First Lady of Nigeria was launching a national campaign against FGM and wanted Dr. Amina to be a key advisor. Dr. Amina was honored but also nervous. This was a chance to influence policy and reach every corner of the country. As she prepared for her meeting with the First Lady, She thought about how far she had come from that scared little girl in the village. In the meeting, Dr. Amina shared her experiences and the lessons she had learned over the years. We need a comprehensive approach, she explained. Education, healthcare, economic opportunities, and community engagement all need to work together if we're going to end FGM. The First Lady was impressed by Dr. Amina's passion and expertise. Together, they crafted a national action plan that would coordinate efforts across government departments, NGOs, and community organizations. As part of the campaign, Dr. Amina appeared on national television to share her story and educate people about the dangers of FGM. She received messages from all over the country, some thanking her for her bravery, others asking for help in their own communities. The work was challenging and sometimes heartbreaking. Dr. Amina still encountered resistance and heard stories of girls being cut in secret. But she also saw incredible progress. More girls were being saved from FGM, more women were speaking out, and more communities were abandoning the practice. One evening, as Dr. Amina was working late in her office, she received a call from her old village. It was her childhood friend, Halima. "Amina, you won't believe it," Halima said excitedly. "Our village just celebrated 5 years of being completely FGM-free. And it's not just us anymore. All the villages in our local government area have stopped the practice." Dr. Amina felt tears of joy in her eyes. She thought about all the girls who would grow up free from the pain and dangers she had experienced. She thought about the women who were now protecting their daughters instead of continuing a harmful tradition. There was still much work to be done, but in that moment, Dr. Amina allowed herself to feel hope. The change she had dreamed of as a young girl was becoming a reality. And she knew that with continued effort, education, and support, they could create a future where no girl in Nigeria would have to fear FGM. As she looked out her window at the bustling city below, Dr. Amina made a silent promise to keep fighting until every girl in Nigeria, and beyond, was safe from FGM. Her journey had started with one small voice speaking out in a village, and now it had grown into a nationwide movement. She knew that with perseverance and unity, they could end FGM once and for all.